What's up, my know-it-alls? Well, it's that time again. It's time for the finale. The series, or is it season finale of Moon Knight. Episode 6. Episode 6. All right, so for the very past 3 episodes, we have had to face and deal with the death, or what we thought was the death, of Mark Spector / Stephen Grant. And throughout this entire time, there's things that they've been doing, little subtle hints they've been dropping. And in this episode, it all comes to roost. So, that's a funny expression. Whatever. The episode starts with Mark floating in water, 2 gunshots. Clearly, we are now back in the quote-unquote real world, and they turn the camera, and you get to see Harrow and his people, and the two security sycophant people, and they retrieve the Ushabti of Ammit. They get it off of Mark's body, and when they do this, Layla is there, and she's keeping quiet, and you see Harrow, he raises up his hands, and it's like, dun, 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 he is victorious, and everyone kneels down, because that's what you do in the presence of the guy who brought back your goddess. Anyway, it's interesting, and you kind of see for a minute, he kind of lingers looking at the statue, his life's work, finally, in the palm of his hand. Is that dramatic enough? Because that's really how it feels like they paint this whole thing. And what happens is he proceeds then to see this purple energy sort of come to life. And at the same time, it transforms and you see his staff change. And the staff changes from just being a cane. It not only grows to the side, it goes from being a cane to being a staff. That's what I'm trying to say. But the head of it shifts, and instead of being 2 gator heads facing each other, one of the heads kind of flips over, and so the other one stays a thing, and it becomes an axe. So now he's got this axe with the head of a gator. It's like the head is one side, the axe is the back of the head, whatever. Anyways, and it's all purple and whatnot, and he's got all this power energy. And so they leave, and they're on their way to they have to go finish everything. And on their way to head to wherever they're going to go, you find out later they're going to the pyramid. You see Layla comes out, and she's like, "Oh, Mark," and she's crying over him, and it's sad. And then she sees the scarab that Harrow put on Mark's chest. Guess what? It still works. That's right. So she ends up she opens her hand, and the thing floats up in the air, and man, she gives it that death glare, Oh yeah, she's like, "I'm gonna follow you. You think you get out? Heck no." So let me cut to the, as you see these trucks, Harrow's trucks, they're leaving, and they're beelining it through the desert until they get to the major road, and the road happens to be stopped currently by Egyptian police, and they're like, "Oh, what's going on?" This and that. And while the dude gets out of the car, and they're all like guns trained, and he takes his cool little staff, and he bams it on the ground. This purple sort of discharge of energy shoots out like a ring, and everybody who's in that vicinity gets judged. Court's adjourned. And almost all of the Egyptian police officers die, except one. And so Harrow comes up and he's like, "Welcome, my brother. You are a disciple, blah, blah, blah. You're good. This is a genuinely good man, and we're going to make sure you live a blah, blah, blah." It's the fastest way to see, everybody else died. I didn't. Woo! We're good. And so he literally, it's like, "What other option you got, bro?" And so then you find out one of the people who's with Harrow jumps out of the back of a truck, pulls down a face mask. It's Layla. I thought you had to have the scarab. What's the point of the scarab if you're just gonna? I don't know. Whatever. I feel like there's a couple of scenes in there they linger just a hair too long. It's perfectly fine. while she's walking, trying to find out what's going on and trying to get close to Harrow, one of the dead bodies wakes up and it's like, "Oh, Layla!" And it's Tauret. Tauret's talking through him, and Layla's kind of taking it in stride. She's seen some crazy stuff, and so she tells him, like, look, she tells her, "I need your help. You have to help." And he needs Khonshu. Mark's trying to make it back. And so she's like, wait, what? Then we cut to the pyramid, and you see Harrow, who has walked roughly halfway up with everybody's help and whatnot, and some other people. And then he hits the thing, and you see purple energy shoot up the pyramid, and one of the walls begin to sort of part. This entire episode is very action-packed. There's a lot that happens in a short amount of time. And it's all very satisfying. I believe very firmly they stuck the landing. We'll get to the know-it-all index toward the end. But, so we then cut to inside the temple, the pyramid, and you get to see Osiris's avatar, Salem, I believe his name was, and then you see some of the other avatars. They're there. They have all been summoned, and they're there clearly. And they're like, Harrow has freed. Someone's trying to free Ammit, and dude's like, it's got to be Harrow. And so we then cut to them all rushing down into the main chamber area as the walls open up, and you see Harrow just barge right in. He's got his staff; it's glowing purple, and he single-handedly just he takes out all the avatars. Super smart move on his part. We cut to Layla, who goes down toward the Ushabti room, I guess you'll call it, and she grabs Khonshu's Ushabti just as dude frees Ammit, and Ammit is this giant, gator-headed, hair-braided Egyptian monster goddess thing. Very cool looking, actually. And it was pretty intense. I watched this and I was like, whoa. And she kind of circles around, and we find out Harrow kneels. Oh yeah. And you find out Harrow's life is imbalanced. He does not balance. And he takes it in stride. I thought he was going to go the villain route and be like, I don't care, blah, blah, blah. I'll force it out of you. And he was going to somehow force her to his service. But it turned out, no, he was legit. He's an actual zealot. He's a real life. He believes what he believes. And he tells her, I'm willing to accept your punishment. And she reveals that, hey, you know what? I once had a perfect avatar, and I ended up here, imprisoned. And so you're like, okay. So she chooses instead. And he's like, well, no, I have your disciples who are balanced and ready to serve you. Please choose one of them. They're worthy. I'm not. Now, there's always that classic, it's not reverse psychology, but it's the concept that in doubting your worth, you therefore display worthiness. I mean, it's not a bad concept. It's not a bad idea, and it works. It does work. And so he finally accepts, okay, and sure enough, his eyes glow purple, and he has now become her avatar. So what does Layla do? Layla in the back, she's got the statue. She picks it up. She smashes it. Smoke billows up, and there is our boy Khonshu. And he's like, Layla El-Faouly, do you promise to protect the Seekers of the Night and become my avatar? He basically is quick to write off Mark because he sucks. And Layla's like, no, Mark, you can't trap me. And she realizes you have to voluntarily accept the role. So he's like, I'll do what I can. And he tries to help on his own. And what does he do? He faces Ammit. And he goes out there and he faces Ammit. And then we get our first glimpse at Mark in the land of reeds. We come from a land down under. Sorry, I don't know why that jumped in my head all of a sudden. I myself have never plundered, but whatever. So, and he's holding his heart, and we're talking about Mark. Mark is holding the heart, the heart symbol thing. It's all full now. It doesn't look transparent or anything. And Tauret's there with him. And he's sort of like, I'm at peace, this and that. And then he proceeds to be like, well, wait a minute, but I'm here and Steven's there and I don't understand. And she's like, look, you don't need him anymore. He's going to stay at the Duat, in the big ocean of the souls and stuff. And he's like, I'm not okay with that. And he turns around and she warns him, if you leave, you can't come back. So he does it anyway. When he turned around, everything, like, as he turns around, all the reeds disappear and everything turns dark again. And he's standing there in the desert of, I assume, the Duat. And he can see, not far away, there's Steven's sandy body. So he rushes over to him. While we cut away briefly. And we cut to Khonshu and Ammit talking. And Khonshu is very much like, you can't do this and that. And she's like, you used to love me. Why can't we do this? And he's like, I don't believe in your way you want to do this. And we can't do this like this. And you see Mark approaches Steven and he promises him, he's like, couldn't leave you. I'm so sorry. When I was there, you were there for me. And I tried to protect you and from all this stuff, but you actually were the one who helped me. It's a very emotional moment. And he begins to turn to sand, but not before he puts his hand with the one he's holding his heart in, and he puts it into Steven's outstretched hand. So both their hands are together with the heart thing as they turn to stone. At that point, the door opens. They're at the Osiris gate. We cut to the other side, and you see the Osiris gate, huge, big in the scene. And they begin to melt from sand to person. So they change, and you see it's like through there across his body and the whole bit. And he's like, you came back for me. This is the Mark Spector and Stephen Grant personalities coming at peace with one another. They're not reconciled in that it's going away. Mark's holding on to him, but they have reconciled. It's actually it's poignant to say the least. I'm actually really, I like it. I like what they did with it. So then, and they're both, and that's when we cut back to the main stories, if you will, where Ammit talking to Khonshu, and they fight. They start to fight, and it's a fight of God people, and she turns around and flips him and throws him, and there's this, they go back and forth. They're pretty evenly matched, but she tends to get the upper hand on him pretty often, and finally she throws him against like a pillar, and she's kind of stalking toward him. Meanwhile, at the land of the Duat, the sands begin to want to try to consume them like a tidal wave, and just as they're running toward the gate of Osiris, and just before they get to the gate of Osiris, the waves about to hit them, and then you see, that's right, good old Tauret in her boat. She sort of like comes across like a surfer in front of the sands and smashes through the middle, thus giving them enough time to get where they're going to go. And you see Mark's eyes open in the water, and he spits up blood. The minute that happens, you see Khonshu, who's like, Mark. And she's about to attack him, meaning Ammit. And then he goes away. Disappears in a big gust of smoke. And you see Mark's eyes suddenly light up. And you hear the same thing. It's like, do you promise to protect the travelers of the night? And become my avatar, arise, Mark Spector, my moon knight. And you're like, it's so dope. And sure enough, he's all eyes glowing. The wraps show back up. And he's there. Ta-da! All super heroic, and you get to see the armor and the whole bit. But they work together. So they transport whatever. He comes and takes him up and scoops him out, and you see they interchange. I say they now. I guess you're gonna have to use a non-binary pronoun because it's they at this point. So Mark is the first one there in Moon Knight gear, and then they switch back and forth between Mark Spector and Stephen Grant seamlessly. And when they do, it's great because you see the Moon Knight change too from Mr. Knight to Moon Knight, Moon Knight proper. And they strike a deal. We're going to help you defeat Ammit, and when we're finished, you're going to release us. And he's like, you have my word. And so I love F. Murray Abraham. He's so great. And it's so funny because he's like, you're going to negotiate with me right now when the world isn't that? And he's like, well, we did learn from the best, didn't we? And you're like, oh, good job, Steven. Steven's pretty awesome. Once they've reconciled, pretty awesome. But they're far away now. They're someplace else. And so Khonshu's like, I still control the night skies. And sure enough, he makes it nighttime, and you see the winds kick up, and Moon Knight leaps into the air and opens up the half moon or the crescent moon cape, and is now being carried aloft by wind. Moon Knight is flying, and it looks amazing. We cut to this scene where Layla's looking around for what to do, and you see the Osiris's dude, who's like, oh, you have to this and this. He tells her exactly what has to happen. Meanwhile, Ammit and Khonshu are fighting, and while they're fighting, this is where Layla decides she has to do something. Now that she knows the secret, remember? She now knows it's going to require avatars to trap Harrow, or to trap Ammit inside Harrow. So she agrees to be Tauret's avatar temporarily. And sure enough, her eyes glow, and you see that she's being taken over or whatever. And that's when we cut then away to a scene where you see Harrow walk to the top of the pyramid, the Great Pyramid of Giza. He walks up to the top of it. I'm sorry, one of the other pyramids. I don't think it's the Great Pyramid of Giza. It's one of the pyramids. Walks up to the top of it, and he's overseeing the entire sort of Egypt City, Cairo place. And Egypt City. Sounds like a band from the 90s. Hello, Egypt City. Anyway, and his Corsa's staff's glowing, and he proceeds to sort of issue forth, go forth, blah, blah, blah. And sure enough, all of a sudden, you see the disciples of Ammit who are like, quickly, judge everyone. And they grab hands the same way Harrow was doing. They can all do now. And so they're doing this, and sure enough, there's an awful lot of guilty people, and you see all these purple souls flying into the sky. And the purple souls are being consumed by Ammit. Ammit is this gateway for all of this, and while she's absorbing their souls, she begins to grow. And you get this giant, half gator, half snake, female god kaiju, Egyptian kaiju thing. And at this, there's rubble from when the explosions had happened earlier, and the rubble moves inside inside the pyramid, and then out steps an awesome looking Layla. Layla's so cool. She's got this armor on, and then she kind of reaches behind her, and when she reaches behind her, she goes whooshing, and she's got these awesome red wings. I believe this is a callback to the Red Scarab. The Red Scarab is a character. So Layla's father was also a kind of Egyptian superhero on his own, and known as the Red Scarab. I think this is supposed to be a callback to that, because all the colors are red, the whole bit. I'm here for it. I think it's awesome. It's an easy way to get a nice, cool, gender-bent version of a character, and I'm down. Especially because he's clearly dead. Obviously, he's dead. But then Tauret's like, oh, your father would be so happy to hear that you're doing well. And you find out that Tauret knows her father from when she took him to the land of reeds. So her father's in heaven. It's a nice little moment. Meanwhile, you see outside the two things as it rushes toward everything. And sure enough, boom, they have a fight. And it's Moon Knight fighting with Harrow, and it mirrors the same fighting that's happening between Khonshu and Ammit, and what you end up with is this really awesome Egyptian kaiju fight. And so Harrow is fighting back, and it's great because Mark is switching back and forth. It's Mark and Steven, and it's so cool. So you get to see Mark doing his stuff with his Moon Knighty things. Then all of a sudden he switches to Steven, and Steven's got the little staff guys, and he's fighting with them. And then as they're about to get to kind of their butt handed to him by Harrow, who flies in? Boom! Layla's the Red Scarab. And so Layla's sitting here, and she's awesome. She's got her wings, and she's blocking things, and it's a wonderful fight. It really is intense. Then we get our first confirmation of something. So, giant Egyptian kaiju fight between Ammit and Khonshu is real. But I thought you couldn't tell if it was fake or not. And by fake, I mean if it was happening like in a spiritual realm, until giant Khonshu staff falls on the ground, and then he summons it, and it slides across the ground, knocking over a jeep and knocking over some like light posts and the whole bit. This is two giant monsters fighting in the middle of Egypt. Legit. So then we cut back to the main fight, and this is really a good one. You get to see Steven. He's like, let me show you everything. Let me show you how we work together now. And it's because he switches back and forth again. And sure enough, he's running around just fighting. And they're doing it's a great fight. And finally, as they're knocking stuff around and whatnot and sort of beating up Harrow's people, you get to this awesome shot straight down the lane. They're going right down the alley, and it's Moon Knight, and it's Layla, and it's Harrow at the end, and you see all the disciples, and they're like, oh yeah, we're going to do this. And that's where you get that really cool scene where Moon Knight jumps over a car, and he's shooting the two little things at the guys. It's one we've seen in the trailers. The fight between the three of them is brutal, until finally you see... there's a Harrow tries to shoot a van, knocking it over. Layla gets on the other side of it and stops it. Uses her wings to stop some stuff. There's this cool moment where this little Egyptian girl was rescued, and she stops and she looks on in amazement. I love this kind of. I love this. We get it takes a beat, and she's like, the little girl says, just plain and simple, "Are you an Egyptian superhero?" And she's like, yeah, I am. And I was like, yes, that's awesome. It's cool. It's very, very cool. Because I'm sure there's lots of cultures that are like, I guess all the superheroes live in America or whatever, something stupid like that. And you get, I'm hoping this kind of stuff opens the gateway for things like Captain Britain, the Captain Britain Corps, Excalibur. Give me some British heroes that we know are awesome, because I think it'd be so dope. So then you cut to this really cool moment where Harrow and Mark are going at each other, and Harrow is shooting this staff stuff, the purple energy, at Moon Knight. And you see just over his shoulder as he knocks Moon Knight back, you see giant kaiju fight happening in the background, and you see Harrow stalking toward him. It's all Dutch angled. It's, again... that's when he sort of slams his scepter or whatever staff into dude's chest, and then you kind of see all of a sudden things go dark, and they wake up. That's right. And he's standing there over Harrow's down body, and he's like, "What's going on?" And sure enough, he switches to Steven. Steven's like, I don't know. At this point, by the way, they got to be doing CGI suits because it's happening so seamlessly. They're on him constant with no cuts, not even virtual cuts. And he switches between Mark and Steven very seamlessly. Again, Oscar Isaac doing brilliant work. Really, really wonderful work. And then you see Layla off to the side, and she's looking confused, and she's like, what was that? And he goes, I don't know. I blacked out. Okay. Wait for it. So then you see them. They take Harrow back to the pyramid, and they touch hands, and they do the thing. And you see the energy that they start to create doing this special spell goes through the statues of the other Egyptian gods, and the statues' eyes light up. The idea, I'm assuming, being that they are kind of blessing this spell with them. So they're, even though there's no other avatars, they're like, yes, no, we're with this. And all of a sudden, you see in the giant kaiju fight, you see Ammit begin to kind of get pulled away, and then starts to deteriorate, to disintegrate into very reminiscent of, I guess, the snapping, so the Thanos snap, but a little more energy than Sandy. And she gets sucked away, and then she gets sucked and absorbed down into Harrow. Harrow's like, you'll never be able to contain me. And sure enough, Khonshu shows up and he's like, finish it. She must be stopped. Kill them both. And he got the thing and he's like, and Layla's like, look, hey, you don't have to do this. And he's like, yeah, I'm not going to do this. And he's like, you have to. And he goes, oh yeah? If you want to do it? He throws his Moon Knight dagger away and it lands in the ground. And he's kind of like, then you do it yourself. And you're like, okay. And then we cut to the psych ward. And you see Mark and Steven. They are talking to Dr. Harrow. They stand up. And you notice as they're talking, and they don't look ill or upset anymore. And he switches back and forth because they are talking to Harrow. Not just Mark and not just Steven. It's both of them together. And they switch seamlessly, like with no issue. They're like back and forth between one and the other. And it's only thing that's different is the way they talk and slightly the set of their shoulders. It's great. It's amazing. Anyway, Harrow in the psych ward gets up and walks away. As he walks away, there's blood on his shoes. And he's like, yeah, I'm not the one this isn't me. And he's like, let's go deal with all this. And he falls backward. And you kind of get, they give you the conclusion that this may very well have been in Harrow's mind. So this was what was happening in Harrow's head, possibly. And then they wake up. They're in Steven's place. There's 2 fish. That's right. They get up. And there's still sand, and they are still strapped to the floor. So you're like, okay. Roll credits. There's a credit scene! Shock of shocks. And what you see is the actual psych ward. It's not white. It's lit the way the rest of the normal world is. And you see Harrow is there. And there's therapists and people and whatnot. And the guy shows up and he sort of speaks with a Spanish accent. He's got on gloves and the whole bit. And you can't really see who it is. Comes and picks him up and walks around him. And while he walks with him, you pass by. There's people dead. That's right. Orderlies, staff, the whole bit. And he gets walked out to a limo, a gorgeous limo. He's thrown into it. And you see a suit-wearing Khonshu. Basically wearing the Mr. Knight suit. But it's Khonshu's head. The Mr. Knight suit, Khonshu's head. He's like, Mark actually thought that after everything that had happened, he has no clue how broken he really is. Allow me to introduce you to my friend, Jake Lockley. Finally! And you see the little divider between the driver's section and the inside cab goes down, and you see in the rearview mirror, you see Oscar Isaac's eyes in one of these. And you're like, and he's like, hello, my friend. He's got a Spanish accent, so apparently Jake Lockley is Hispanic. I'm okay. I'm down. And sure enough, he picks up a gun, and you see him, and you see a totally different face, man. And that's it. And then he pulls out, and you see he's in a limo. The plates say SPKTR, Spectre. So in the comic books, the 3 personalities, and we've talked about this before, are Mark Spector, the mercenary, Stephen Grant, who's a Bruce Wayne-like millionaire. Back then it was a millionaire, now it'd probably be a billionaire or something stupid. And then you have Jake Lockley, who's the street level guy. So they're doing a little bit of playing with the personalities. I'm down. I love it. This was a lot of fun. I enjoyed the series. So what is the Know-It-All Index? Know-It-All Index for this episode. Know-It-All Index for this episode is I'm going to give it a strong 9 out of 10. I loved this episode. So what does the series get from me? The entire series really, for me, hit in a lot of really great ways. I think I'll go 8.5 for the whole thing on average. Yeah, 8.5. I was happy with the whole series overall. It wasn't perfect, but there you go. Now you know. And if knowing's half the battle, you're halfway to being a know-it-all. yourself. All right, guys, let me know in the comment section below what you guys thought. I'd love for you to please subscribe to the channel. And, hey, man, click the little bell icon. Be notified when new content drops. All right, I cannot wait for the next exciting installment of what's happening in the MCU. You know what's next, though? My review of In the Multiverse of Madness. That's right, Doctor Strange 2. It's coming up. I will put my spoiler review out there very, very soon. I might even get a chance to get, I might get Mrs. Know-It-All or possibly some of my buddies elsewhere to talk with me as well, to talk a little bit about it. It's been exciting waiting for it. I can't wait to see it. So, all right, talk to you later, guys. See you next week. Never forget, everyone loves a know-it-all.